This is WZRD Chicago, 88.3 FM. And we have with us at WZRD, Michael Zink. He is a candidate for judge for the Subcircuit Court of Cook County, for the 20th Subcircuit Court of Cook County. Welcome, Michael. How are you today?
Thank you, Trudy. Thank you for having me. Wonderful.
Thank you. So try not to speak my name on the air. We try to remain anonymous while we're on the air.
Oh,
Michael, first of all, for our listeners who do not know what the 20th Subcircuit Court of Cook County covers, what geography does it cover?
so the 20th Subcircuit starts from the Gold Coast, about Chestnut Street on the south end. It goes all the way up to Devon, which is basically the end of Edgewater on the north end. And then to the west, it goes as far west as Ashland and even a little bit further west than Ashland in certain areas. Generally, this is all on the north side along the lakefront. And so it spans about, I believe, 7 different wards. But most of those wards are the 44th Ward, 43rd Ward, 46th Ward, 47th Ward, and 48th Ward.
Do you have any idea about how many Chicagoans, what's the population in the subcircuit, the 20th Subcircuit? Do you have any idea?
I think it's a few 100,000. And in terms of likely voter turnout, I think we're expecting about 50 to 60,000.
Mm-hmm. And also, so how many, do you know how many subcircuits there are that do cover Chicago? Are there 2 or are there 3?
This is I believe this is the only one that covers all Chicago. Most of the other subcircuits cover different areas, both suburbs. A few of them cover both city areas as well as suburban. And today is, of course, a big day because today is the first day of early voting in each of the wards in Chicago. And so what that means is for the last few weeks, people have been able to go downtown to a few places to actually vote. But today is actually the first day that people can go to their own ward, and each ward has one particular site where people can go and vote and cast early votes. In addition to, of course, early voting that you could do by mail if you apply for getting your ballot in the mail.
And all people have to do, right, is to go to the Chicago Board of Elections website to enter their address, and then they will be able to find out where they could vote in their ward.
Absolutely. It's all available online. You could even apply to get your ballot by mail online as well, and it'll come to you in a few days. And a lot of people increasingly are doing that, and especially in the city of Chicago.
In the judges' races, we often hear, I have served as an election judge, and we hear voters say that they are not going to vote on the judge side of the ballot because there are about 100 names there, and they do not know any of them, so they're afraid that they might vote for the wrong person. However, hopefully, our listeners will learn a bit about you, and then what in your background, we see that you have done advocacy work. What kind of advocacy work have you done, and did that lead to your wanting to become a lawyer and now a judge?
It has. I've had a wide variety of work, not only in my career in helping people, but also a great deal of community service. So I went to law school locally here in Chicago at DePaul University. And during those years, I was very active both in the legal community in terms of working and various jobs to clerk. I clerked at one of the largest, most prominent labor law firms in which represented many unions as well as people suing their employers for various violations in law and various ordinances. I clerked also during law school at one of the largest and most prominent personal injury law firms in Chicago and really in America, Romanucci and Blandon. Tony Romanucci actually has gone on and remains a good friend of mine. And he's actually now one of George Floyd's family attorneys. And so these are really experiences that formed me from an early age, right at the beginning of my career. And I've been very active in the law. I've been a lawyer now for almost 20 years. And I've been downtown at the same firm effectively ever since. And in addition to all my legal work, which primarily is involved in court, I've been active in a great deal of variety of different community work as well in my own neighborhood.
When you clerked at the law firms, That was just to find legal cases, their precedents, and other background information to support whatever you needed, right? For whatever the attorney on the case needed.
Right, exactly. You work hand in hand with the attorneys on these various matters at whatever firm you happen to be with, and you really learn a lot. You're doing a lot of that very important work that's really the basis of everything that the case is about. For example, discovery. Discovery means the questions that each party asks each other during a lawsuit, and likewise, they exchange documents. This is all called discovery. And essentially, when you're clerking as a law student, this is your first time even understanding what any of this is and handling any of this. So it's really important. It not only helps you learn not only the best discovery practices, but it also helps you learn substantive law. And it also then leads you to learn some more and get jobs as an actual practicing attorney, perhaps at the same firm. Many people move on to different firms, but one way or the other, you really do learn a lot from an early age.
What is a substantive law for our listeners that might not know?
So substantive law is basically the laws, the specific ordinances or statutes that are involved. There's a whole bunch of different layers of laws, but for example, in state law, that's called the Code of Civil Procedure in civil law, and that's a whole bunch of different statutes that govern various areas of the law. Each county, or I should say, each city and each municipality has their own law. So, for example, the city of Chicago has their own ordinance, a whole variety of different laws that apply just in the city of Chicago. Same thing with each suburb. If you go to each suburb, they have their own ordinance as well. And so when you're on the bench, if you become a judge, no matter where you're sitting, if you happen to be in any of those areas that have suburban laws, then you're going to have to learn about all those as well. And so I think that's what a formative career is very helpful in learning. You get to learn things on the fly. You're going to have to learn things very quickly. You also have other judges around you who are experienced, who will be able to help you if you are a new judge as well.
Okay, when we're talking about the clerking, when you did the research at that time, were you able to go online to find out what you needed, or are there actual volumes that you have to sift through?
Back then, almost 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago, it was largely book-based. There were several software programs that law firms and lawyers used. They were still, of course, in their infant stages at that point. Now it is almost exclusively online and legal software. It makes things very, very easy. I think what it does for a lot of libraries, it makes those old books more like trophies than anything else, because people don't need to really go sifting through pages anymore. It's at your fingertips, whether it's on your phone or at your computer. You can look up any statutes, any laws, as well as the various decisions from the appellate court, the Illinois Supreme Court, even the U.S. Supreme Court on these various matters. And it's all just a matter of seconds on your phone or on your computer.
Versus hours and hours before with the manual.
Absolutely.
What organizations did you work for or interned at before you were interested in the law career that might have influenced to pursue a law career?
Well, in addition to the firms I mentioned, which were Romanucci and Blandon, and then the other firm for the labor unions was Asher, Gittler, Greenfield, and D'Alba, was the title at the time. I also worked at several other smaller firms, Murphy and Murphy, which is a plaintiff's personal injury law firm. I also externed at the Illinois Department of Labor and worked directly with their chief counsel. And again, that was for the state of Illinois enforcing various laws against employers who were either being sued by employees or otherwise being found in violation of various practices.
And were there advocacy organizations that you worked for even before you, like Citizen Advocacy Center? And did you also, were you an intern there? And were you an intern with Senator Dick Durbin at one time?
I did actually. The first year after law school, I wound up working 3 jobs during the entire summer. So it was a very, very busy summer. As you indicated, one of the jobs I worked during the daytimes was as an intern at Senator Dick Durbin's office. It was a remarkable experience. Helped draft many letters on behalf of the senator and worked directly with his staff on a whole variety of issues for that summer. The other job you mentioned, the Citizen Advocacy Center, I likewise worked during the days. That's out in Elmhurst, Illinois, right outside of the city of Chicago. But they're a government watchdog group, largely involved in various matters such as water issues or TIF issues, tax increment financing issues. And essentially, it looked over various entities, not only in DuPage County, but to a lesser extent, even in the city of Chicago, to look at these practices. And as externs, or rather as interns in that job, a team and I worked together on all these different issues. I think we had about 8 of us there that summer. And then during the summer, as we built our research up, then we gave detailed presentations at the end of the summer to the various residents of DuPage County, because it's just right outside of Cook County. And so it was a really fascinating experience. I'm still close with a few of the people there that I was involved with and that I worked with, because I think a lot of those issues still resonate today, 20 some years later. And then the final job I worked that summer was actually a night job as a union stock clerk at an Osco Drug locally where I lived. And I loved that job. I was there for 7 years between high school, college, and during law school as well. And just fantastic work and great experience, not only working with people, dealing with people's customers' needs, on a daily basis. So it is something that people can really learn from, even during law school.
Yes, customer service definitely helps you deal with people more easily and better because then you see all different kinds of situations.
Absolutely.
You said that you were a member of Union Local what while you were at ASCO?
This was the United Food Commercial Workers Local 880.
And were you active in the union at that time?
I was not active with the union at the time, just because I was a student and had all these other activities happening. But no, I was a proud member for, I think, 7 years from 1995 to 2002.
And so the most work or the most involvement that you had with the unions was when you were practicing law on their behalf against the employers that might have violated some of the members' rights.
Correct. Asher Gittler Greenfield in Alba is one of the nation's leading law firms regarding representing various unions and employees. In that capacity during law school, I was clerking and working directly with their partners, with their associates, on a whole variety of different matters. Employment law touches a whole bunch of different areas of the law, but it also touches different areas of judges. So, for example, the seat that I'm running for now in the circuit court, there were cases in circuit court, which typically would be at the Daly Center downtown. But then there are also different other areas, such as human relations cases, other union grievance hearings. So there are whole different layers of work that had to be done representing these unions.
For human relations, is that a kind of like civil rights? What is involved in human relations?
Well, there are a number of different human relations. There's an Illinois Department of Human Relations, and there's also been a Cook County, I should say, a City of Chicago Commission on Human Relations, and it touches on some labor issues. It also touches on various discrimination issues, all sorts of different matters with respect to human relations. And largely at the time, people could actually go to the different agencies and have the agencies begin a lawsuit for them. Now, primarily, I think people go to private law firms who can adjudicate those cases for the clients, but the state and the city and the county also have mechanisms as well.
Oh, so people can no longer what kind of mechanisms from the city and state? They can't file lawsuits on behalf of the people, but they could help in what way?
Well, they could file lawsuits. They also largely could steer them into situations where they negotiate before a lawsuit needs to be filed. So what happens is they would, for example, send a complaint off to an employer saying, this person is alleging discrimination, and give the employer a variety of different questions to answer. And then at that point, the government entity would decide, is this something that we should adjudicate? Is this something that there likely is some kind of a violation or not? And if not, obviously the investigation terminates without any kind of finding against the employer. But if there is a finding against the employer of possible or likely discrimination in that example, then yes, it would be adjudicated in court one way or the other. It first generally would be adjudicated within that agency, whichever government agency it is. And then that can eventually be taken up to circuit court level as well.
When they decide whether to adjudicate or not, do they take into consideration that that case might be more prevalent among other people? That other same thing might have happened to other people, or do they just adjudicate on that one case alone when they decide to adjudicate or not?
They only would handle the one case, but largely, if for example, it is an employee indicating that there's discrimination, that employee often would speak with other employees in the same setting, and then at that point, it might even rise to the level of a class action where a private law firm would get involved and file some sort of class action discrimination suit in that example. So there are ways to do it. It wouldn't necessarily be the government entity including that, but the litigant themselves could go and try to increase and escalate it.
Mm. You mentioned that you want to pursue more transparency. As a judge, well, let's first talk about in what ways, in all these other experiences that you have and working with, such as the Department of Labor, etc. What situations did you see that there was not enough transparency?
Well, I've seen that a lot over many years, not merely even in my early years, but even in the many years that I've been practicing law. One of the things that I think people don't have, it's not necessarily perhaps a transparency issue, just a lack of knowledge issue that people really should engage a little bit more about, is who are my representatives? And as I remind people, the vast majority of your day-to-day life is governed by laws that are made by your state representative, your state senator, and your alderperson. Those three levels, if you ask the average person on the street, and I was guilty of this myself for many years, nobody could name me, perhaps even one of them. And so what I remind people now in many of these years of experience is that get to know your elected officials, especially your state representative, your state senator, and your alderperson. Those people, as I said, indicate they drive a lot of the laws that are involved in your day-to-day life. And it's not to say that you're a member of Congress or your state U.S. senator aren't important. Of course they are, but in terms of day-to-day work, your state representative in Illinois, your state senator in Illinois, both of them go to Springfield for you, as well as your alderperson who goes to city council here in the city. They affect your daily life. They're much more accessible than people realize as well. They're very happy to be events. They're very happy to talk to people directly on the phone. They are not hiding by any means. They are very much accessible. And so I always encourage people in my own community as well, if you have issues that come up, even if it's a local issue, those are the three people that you really want to start to get to know. And I've tried to take steps to get people a little bit more in tune and in touch with their elected officials as well. When I was involved with the East Lakeview Neighbors organization, East Lakeview Neighbors is one of the largest community groups in Lakeview. It involves Wrigleyville, but also includes the area just to the east for now called North Halsted, formerly known as Boys Town, and that's one of the largest LGBTQ communities in the country, much less Chicago. And so what I've done and what I did during those years when I was president, which was about 5.5 years, was to get people more in touch with their elected officials. And as a result, many of our elected officials, as I said, they're very accessible. They would attend our monthly meetings regularly. If for some reason they couldn't, they would always have perhaps their chief of staff or another staffer come and attend the meeting, not only updating what's been going on in the community with their particular work, but also taking questions and taking things back for consideration. And I think our community really began to appreciate our elected officials' input, but also their transparency as far as what they were doing, what bills they were trying to pass, for example, in Springfield, or here locally in the city council. What ordinances are they trying to pass? What are they supporting? And if any controversies come up in the community, those elected officials were always instrumental in giving their input and again taking back input from the neighborhood as well. So I think there's a nice sounding board kind of element to having our elected officials get involved on a daily basis with us.
So when you talked about the transparency and more transparency, what you meant is that if people are more in touch with what their state rep and state senator and other person is doing, then they would understand that would help with the transparency about the laws and the ordinances that are affecting our lives. Is that what you meant?
Absolutely. Knowledge is power. And the more you know about what our elected officials do, the more transparent it becomes because you ask intelligent questions, you ask questions about what they're doing, and there's nowhere for them to hide. And to their credit, they generally don't hide. But again, it's important for us as an engaged electorate to ask those questions and to be involved and interested in it.
concerning the Freedom of Information Act, and when you were clerking or when you were helping your various internship supervisors, did some of the research that you did not cover what you needed, and did you ever have to go into filing a Freedom of Information request?
Yeah, so many times FOIA requests are very common for any law firm. And yes, as you said, you can try to get the information, in certain other methods such as the internet or, perhaps, some other software. But by and large, there are certain pieces of information that only a FOIA request is going to cover. And so, of course, you send that out as detailed as you possibly can. In many cases, you get what you need, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get some kind of an answer that either sounds evasive or otherwise indicates that the information needs to be narrowed down a bit, and that's fair enough. And so what you do is you follow up and you give them a narrower, whichever entity that you're requesting the information from. You narrow it down as much as you can. In extreme cases, you would have to file lawsuits, to get the information. That's not common, but it does happen because by and large, a lot of these government agencies understand FOIA requests are, absolutely the entitlement of the electorate. We are entitled to that information if it's public. And so it's not a matter of hiding it. It's a matter of just making sure that they're getting you the information that you need. And of course, most government authorities have some kind of a specific dedicated person or team that deals with FOIA requests.
Are you able to give us some example about what kind of FOIA request you did as part of your internship or yeah, part of your internship, because that's what's that's your formative basis for who you are now.
Sometimes you need to do a FOIA request, for example, at the police station at 35th and Michigan, I think it is 3510 South Michigan, I think is the address. And so that's somewhere you ask particular reports or for particular body cam footage, things like that. Those are very common. And again, you have to be as narrow as you can in terms of the date and perhaps a time frame, where something happened that you need the information about. But that's one of the more common ones. And yes, and occasionally you will get resistance, but by and large, these agencies know that they're required to give the information that if they have a good idea of what you're asking for, generally they will give it to you. But sometimes you do have to narrow the scope a bit.
For these FOIA replies, if they give you the wrong information, perhaps maybe by mistake or whatever the case may be, has there ever been a case like that the information you receive is actually wrong information?
It's happened a few times over the years where it was just a mistaken information or maybe even extraneous information. They gave you what you wanted, but extra information you didn't need. But if they gave you, just simply the wrong information, again, it could be human error on the other end. And so persistence pays to begin with before you start, escalating to litigation. Generally, persistence is going to pay with your FOIA request to make sure that you're asking for the right information. If they do give you the wrong information, you simply probably resubmit it exactly and maybe emphasize and probably even call somebody on the phone over there and explain, I asked for this information, you gave me this instead. It could very well be human error. If they simply misunderstood your question and thought they were sending you the correct information, again, it's an opportunity to revise it and narrow it down so that there's no question about what you're looking for.
Well, then all that experience does help you in your work as a judge if you get elected as a judge, because now you're evaluating the evidence. You also mentioned that as a judge you want to help there be more transparency. What did you mean by that? More transparency in government and in the court system. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think in terms of transparency for judges, as many of our listeners and voters know, when you go into that ballot booth, most people don't know any of the judicial names unless they happen to do some research on their own or happen to know one or two of them. And so in terms of that, it's not necessarily a judge doing it from the bench. in terms of increasing transparency. But what a judge can do, and many judges already do, is go out into the community. Once they're on the bench, they go and they help, go into neighborhoods that are underserved, underprivileged, and they talk to, various students, not just law students, but even, go into a grade school, kind of teach kids about, what a judge does, why a judge is important, why they may want to eventually go to law school and become a judge themselves eventually. Those kind of things are very important. And again, it takes judges away from any kind of shield or any, lack of transparency. If a judge can be out there in the community and, kind of teach the community about what they do, I think that's very important for transparency matters.
Are there judges that have done that?
Oh, yes, many judges already do that, and it's probably a relatively recent phenomena. Probably in the last 15 or 20 years, it's been a little bit more prevalent. But yes, many judges have taken that initiative, and they go out there and they teach students, and they stay involved in their communities, and they teach, seminars about what judges do. Judges have to also be somewhat careful because they can't take positions on matters, especially because many of these matters could eventually wind up before them in a courtroom. So they're not going to tell you I'm for this policy or against this policy, but what they will do is they can talk about what the judge actually does or what this law actually means and how it's applied. That kind of matter, is something I already get frequently asked about now as a candidate. Candidates have to follow those same rules where I can't necessarily take a position on a particular point, but I can explain this is what the law speaks about. This is how the law is applied. This is what one party would have to do to prove their case under the law, or this would be what the other party would have to do to disprove the same matter. So judges, like I said, have to be somewhat careful, but they can still be very active.
We are speaking with Michael Zink, who is a candidate for judge for the 20th Subcircuit Court of Cook County. So when you are a judge, you do plan to step out into the community and do these events and speak with the community as you've described other judges have done?
I think it's a great idea, and that's what I intend to do if I am fortunate enough to be elected, to continue to be out there and make outreach, not merely to my local community, but to other communities as well, that may not even know what judges do. I think that's an important thing. It's something that's been near to my heart for many years, even in my bar association work. For example, I was president of the Advocate Society, which are the Polish American attorneys. Coincidentally, today's Pulaski Day, celebrating Polish culture. So a nice time to talk about it. But when I was president for that 1 year of the Advocate Society, I made intentional outreach to a whole variety of different cultural bar associations. Many people don't know that we have so many cultural bar associations here in Chicago for a whole variety of different diverse backgrounds. And so what I did during my year as president was to reach out to a whole variety of these or different cultural bar associations and arrange what we call delegations. Basically, groups of our advocates members and I would go and attend a meeting, one of the general meetings of one of these bar associations. And then later on in the year, they would reciprocate and that bar association and their president would come to attend an advocates meeting. And to this day, I've become friends with quite a few of the presidents of those bar associations at that time. Several of them are judges now themselves. And I think it proved to be very, very important, because again, it not only got people involved with, different organizations to understand, organizations they may not even have known existed, but it created a lot of friendship and bonds, which I think is critical in any industry, especially when it comes to law.
Bar associations do more than just support the members and just, the members are like, they're more than just a membership organization. They also do training, continuing ed for judges and also for attorneys. What part did you have in that?
Yes, bar associations are a critical lifeline between the public and the law. So some of the things I've done with bar associations, for example, the Illinois State Bar Association and the Chicago Bar Association, I've given what's called continuing legal education seminars. Essentially, you teach either individually or sometimes as part of a forum group. You teach various matters of the law, and these are generally to lawyers because lawyers have a minimum number of continuing legal education hours that they're required to fulfill, just like in so many other industries, lawyers have those kind of requirements as well. And so I've taught many of those over the years to lawyers. But I've also, through those bar associations and also in other organizations, have taught seminars that were not necessarily for legal education, but just kind of the education of the public. So, in other words, for example, you could have a public seminar, as I did during East Lakeview Neighbors forums. We held a handful of different forums regarding various criminal matters. Whenever people started talking about crime in the media, instead of our community getting upset or pointing fingers at each other, essentially what I did was worked with our talented board, and we got together some forums to teach people about, first of all, some basic things. What happens after somebody is arrested? What are the various procedures and policies behind that? And then we also talked about things such as COPA. What happens with a police officer who gets disciplined for misconduct on the job. We also spoke about the Safety Act, the Pretrial Fairness Act, which had so many questions. People in the community didn't really understand it very well. A lot of misinformation had been put out there. And so instead of, fostering any anger or resentment among the neighbors, what our board and I did was we organized various forums to teach people what does this law even mean. And to do that, I got a whole bunch of our elected officials involved, as well as our prosecutors, as well as our public defenders, as well as our police, as well as our community activists, and had everybody, who was a stakeholder one way or the other, giving these seminars. And we kept them as open forums so that people in the community could ask questions in advance and even ask questions on the spot, so that people can answer these questions that come up, because there were still so many questions and a great deal of uncertainty about them. And so those are examples of some of the ways that you can really take some steps without necessarily telling people what to think or how to think about something. You can teach them, this is what the law is, this is what is required for that law to even apply, this is what for example a prosecutor has to do, this is what a defendant or a public defender would have to do to fight the law. And so I think at the end of the day, it really helped our neighborhood get together and understand what these laws were about. It also helped the neighbors understand, that judges have a critical role in these, but so do all of us as community members.
How many members are in the East Lakeview Neighborhood Associations? About
The approximately, I think we have about 150 different members, but the community itself covers some 20,000 residents. And many of the people who attend our meetings and engage in us may not even be formally members. They may just be coming to attend the meeting. And as I tell everybody, you need not pay your dues. It's always nice, because we need to pay the bills over there. But at the same time, the whole point of the organization is to get people involved and get them engaged and get them informed as far as what is happening.
when the Safety Act first came out, there was in the provisions was that attorneys and judges need to be trained on that. So what is the status right now of attorneys and judges understanding the Safety Act well?
It's still in the process of being understood by everybody, really, for several reasons. One, of course, it's only a very new law. There are many, many appellate cases right now that are being adjudicated practically every week. There are a few more, it seems, regarding particular circumstances of detention. What the Safety Act has is a list of particular offenses that are detainable. But effectively, what happens is the procedure is the prosecutor has to make the argument to the judge in writing in a petition, but essentially a prosecutor has to ask the judge that they want this particular defendant to be held while awaiting trial for what reason, and they have to articulate those reasons in the petition. And then ultimately the judge has to look at that petition and make the determination as far as whether that is proper. And of course, if the defendant has a public defender, the public defender would argue against that petition. And ultimately, after the judge hears both arguments, the judge has to make a determination. And that's at the circuit court level, which is the role that I'm running for at circuit court. And that's in the criminal division. And then what happens is if the judge makes a determination that either one side or the other disagrees with, then they have to take that to the appellate court, and the appellate court then will be making these decisions. I suspect in the coming years, at least in the next few years, as more of these cases come out, the appellate court decisions will create more of an understanding as far as what particular matters are detainable, and also various other matters that are involved with the Safety Act. Those are still, as I said, they're being adjudicated. Eventually, if some of them will wind up in front of the Illinois Supreme Court, I'm sure. And then the Illinois Supreme Court, of course, will be the ultimate authority here in Illinois for any of those matters.
So fleshing out the details of the Safety Act right now is mostly on the shoulders of the judicial system. Is that correct?
Well, the judicial system right now is step one in that process. And then ultimately, I think most of these decisions, as far as the Safety Act, are going to come down to appellate court rulings. The appellate court is just above the circuit court. The appellate court has to look at the facts of each circumstance, every case that comes before it, and particularly in these cases, to determine whether the judge made a sound ruling or whether there was some part of the ruling that was improperly done, and they may remand it back to that circuit court judge to then review everything again and again make a decision.
Mm. So currently, the legislature will not uh, edit the law or anything, edit the Safety Act, right? There's or they could, but is there anything in the works about that? Do you know of?
We're right in the middle of session in Springfield right now. Session typically runs from January to the end of May. And so there very well may be some bills out there. There are always many bills, many hundred, I think even thousands of bills that are filed every year in Springfield. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is some regarding the Safety Act. But of course, that's a procedure as well in Springfield for any of those bills to even become law. So, as the old saying goes, it's just a bill, until it goes through those procedures. And so what happens is, yes, I suspect there would be, some bills pertaining to Safety Act provisions. Some of those bills are going to, relate to appellate court decisions specifically on the point. Others may just be from the community or from a particular legislator who has heard things through the community about different ways that the law should be revised in certain ways. It is a state law, so if there are going to be any revisions or amendments to it, it would come in Springfield. And again, that goes back to my earlier point of knowing your state representative and your state senator, because they are the ones who ultimately weigh in on those state laws.
Mhm. And then if we were to ask the question that I just asked you, they would be in a better position to know if there are any pending or some bills that are being sponsored that concern the safety law.
Exactly. You can talk to your state representative or your state senator, and they'll tell you some of the pending bills. They'll also have a good idea of whether a particular bill is likely to pass. As I said, there are many hundreds or even thousands of bills that are filed. Doesn't mean that any of them become law. They have to go through processes. And so your elected official in Springfield, your state representative and your state senator will be able to tell you the likelihood, at least in their opinion, do they think that this particular provision, whatever the bill is, do they think it's going to ever, become law? And if so, will it be this session? Perhaps it'll be next year. Obviously, there are a lot of factors that go into the success of any bill, but at the same time, your state representative, state senator will be able to not only give you the idea of whether it's likely to become law, but more importantly, they're there to hear you out. And if you have opinions or questions about a bill, by all means, you should be talking to them.
The Circuit Court of Cook County and the Supreme Court of Illinois, they do administrative work too, right? In addition to work on the bench, the justices.
Well, the Supreme Court justices also are very accessible. They're very involved with the judges on every level, as well as the bar associations, and for good reason. They understand that we all, one way or the other, we're all, cogs in one giant machine of the law. And so, yes, the Supreme Court justices are very active with the bar associations. And again, they have to be insulated for good reason because many matters are going to wind up before them, so they're not going to be able to take positions on particular matters. But yes, they absolutely will increase, their visibility. And again, those are public officials as well. Again, you won't be able to ask them particular points on particular positions, but what you will be able to get, find out from them, what are the procedures and what are some of the administrative works that they do, even when they're not on the bench hearing some case.
Yes, because I have interviewed some of the Supreme Court justice, and she told me that they have to do administrative work, which involves committees to evaluate rules affecting whatever needs to be adjusted to whatever matters come up, and have to have new rules. What about the Subcircuit Court? Is that just for judicial hearings, or is there any administrative work involved at that level?
Oh, there are. The judges have their own little organizations and also committees as well. And yes, I mean the judges are in regular contact. Of course, every division has a head judge of each particular one. And in Cook County, the chief judge of all is Tim Evans. And but each of these different divisions that has a head, the head of each division then meets regularly with the chief judge. But also they meet with the rank and file judges as well, because obviously they need to know what's going on at the circuit court level on a daily basis. Nobody can be everywhere. And so it's important for all these various administrative roles to occur. Like the judges essentially, it works its way up a hierarchy, just like so many other groups, so that the best decisions can be made. And more importantly, the best policies can be made by those who are in charge of the whole procedure.
For the 20th Subcircuit, would you be the only judge in the 20th Subcircuit and you're filling that vacancy, or are there many other judges that will work with you and then you're just filling a vacancy for one of those judges?
This is the first election for the 20th Subcircuit, which is Judge Budzinski's vacancy. She vacated as of, I believe, is September 30th of last year. And so this is the first and so far only seat that's been up for election in the 20th Subcircuit. And although there are many other judges who live within the subcircuit, and currently this is the only seat currently right now on the ballot for the 20th Subcircuit. And certainly there may be additional ones in the future. This subcircuit, as well as the 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th subcircuits, were just recently created through Springfield a few years ago, and now this year in this cycle, as you'll see online, if you see the various subcircuits, these are all brand new seats. The 20th subcircuit happens to only have one, but several of the subcircuits have two.
Hmm. And do you know why recently the legislature created the 16th, 17th, and 18th, or even the 19th subcircuits?
Primarily is to increase diversity, because I think in the last, well, especially in the last 15 or 20 years, people have realized that even the bench, even judges, there was not a great deal of diversity on the bench throughout Cook County, really throughout the state of Illinois. And so what was done was to create diversity in underrepresented districts. Basically, these subcircuits are basically districts, but subcircuit is what they call it. When you're running for judge. And so many of these subcircuits, many of these districts, in particular areas, really didn't have enough visibility, have enough representation on the bench in the various circuit courts. And so to increase the diversity, that was the primary goal of these subcircuits. And I suspect that's why we'll probably have some more elections involving these subcircuits in the coming years.
So the seats have been the subcircuits have been created, but is there anybody presiding over those subcircuits now?
Well, just the general judge, the administrative judges, for particular divisions, there's not a particular head of the 20th subcircuit. That's not really how it works. But effectively, what happens is whoever wins the election for the 20th subcircuit then will report to their chief judge, whoever that is, if it's in law division or traffic or what have you. And then, of course, as I said, ultimately it leads to Chief Judge Tim Evans up in the top of the circuit court for Cook County.
Okay, so first, Tim Evans is at the top, and then there are the subdivisions, such as for traffic and for what else?
Oh, there's law division, there's criminal, there's chancery. In each courthouse in Cook County, there's 6 different courthouses through the suburbs as well. Each of them have their own chief judge as well. Obviously the downtown Chicago Daily Center is the first district, but then there's Skokie is the second district. Rolling Meadows is the third district. Maywood's the fourth district. Bridgeview is the fifth district. Markham is the sixth district. And basically, if you're elected in this subcircuit, even though our subcircuit is only limited in terms of where people can vote, if I am elected, I could be put anywhere in those 6 districts throughout Cook County. I would be very comfortable with that because I've practiced in all those courthouses for many years, and I know how the procedures work. So those would not be any change, but it is kind of a nice example of how wide this our county is. Our county is larger than many countries, and so I think, and in fact, it's the largest unified court system in America, I believe. And so what happens is, there's a lot of things for our chief judges and all those head judges to look at and organize, and so there's a great deal of work involved.
I think you mentioned before that if you're elected, then you would start at the bottom and you would be placed in the traffic court.
Correct. Just about every judge, as far as the procedures go, would wind up in traffic court for some number of months. And then what happens is once the judges are comfortable that you know what you're doing and that you've had enough experience running some court calls, you'll get placed wherever they need you. There are vacancies throughout the county in any of those various courthouses I mentioned in various divisions. And so many judges wind up going somewhere where they may have only practiced a little bit during their career, maybe not even at all. And so, it is a situation where judges have to learn quickly, and they do. It's basically an extension of what practice of law is. In the practice of law, you're going to almost on a daily basis see things come up that you didn't know about, and you're going to have to go and learn them quickly. If you do that as a judge, basically, not only will you be learning, from the various case law in that particular area of the law, but you'll also have judges around you who can give you some idea and advice, and even can tell you exactly kind of what to look for, when you're trying to decide particulars of a case. And that's why judges, I think, are very flexible. They can kind of go just about anywhere because they know how to do this, in terms of learning quickly, because that's what you did as a practitioner.
When you uh, if well, you will be in traffic court when if you win. Who is the chief judge of traffic right now? Do you know?
Her name is Diane Marszalik, and she's been in charge of that, I think, for 2 or 3 years. And in fact, I think she's the inaugural holder of that title. I think that was a role specifically created for her. And she's done this so long, she's worked with brand new judges for so long that I think the chief judge was very comfortable having her continue that role because those early days as a judge, I'm sure I would be too. You're going to be nervous. You want to make sure you're doing a good job. You want to make sure you're not missing anything. And Judge Marshall has done an exemplary job to do that. And I'm sure that's why she was, why that role was created.
So after you get your feet wet in a traffic court, and then you're assigned to the various vacancies where they might need you. What are those vacancies all about? If there is a vacancy, wouldn't they try to put out a call for judges to apply to fill that vacancy?
Well, generally, the supervising judges are going to ask you to go to a particular court area. So, they say we have a vacancy in Chancery. We need you to go there. My understanding is very few judges are going to say no. You're going to go wherever you're requested, and that's what you're running for. It goes with the territory when you're running for this role. In one way or another, if you want to be a judge. You have to go with the flow, and as I said, you're going to be learning on the job no matter where you are. But it's important that you be flexible with that because, again, it also shows an element of reason of the judge to be willing to learn something that they may not know much about or be comfortable with, or may not even know any of the judges in that particular courthouse.
Why would there be vacancies? Is it because the judge is ill, or why would there be vacancies for these other judges to be appointed to fill?
Generally, the vacancies come from retirements. Judges have a variety of reasons that they retire, but they do happen quite frequently. And there are various processes to becoming the judge. The one that I'm in right now is obviously the old-fashioned election with people going to the ballot. But there are also several other ways that people can become judges. You can become a judge by being appointed by an Illinois Supreme Court justice. Another way is through what's called the associate process. That's effectively, without going into too much detail to confuse people, but basically what happens is if you want to become an associate judge, you apply. Then various bar associations look over your credentials as well as various judicial committees headed by these various chief judges of various divisions. And then they all get together. And for example, just the other day, a new list came out. There's 3 vacancies that came up in this associate process. And what happens is I think it was 81 people applied for it. Those 81 people had their credentials reviewed by bar associations as well as judicial committees. And then those committees narrowed it down to 6, basically 2 times as many seats that are available. So those 6 people who got chosen on the quote unquote short list now have to go and speak to full circuit judges. Full circuit judges are the ones generally that were elected countywide, meaning that they're going to have to go over the next few weeks and speak to various judges individually. Those full circuit judges then elect these final 3 seats, and the three people who get the most votes among those full circuit judges then become associate judges, who then will become a judge, in a matter of weeks.
That sounds like one-on-one endorsement sessions.
Sort of. It's basically the the judges. There, it's not a process that too many people know a lot about because the full circuit judges are allowed to vote however they want, and so they don't. I don't think there's a whole lot of disclosure as far as what takes a vote. But what happens is, yes, I mean, it's a lot of lobbying. The candidates go and speak with the judges, to tell them their credentials, to say why they think they would be a good judge, and then those full circuit judges make their decisions.
So you mentioned that there are 3 vacancies now. So after you get your feet wet in traffic court, you might be assigned to one of those vacancies to work be- until they do have that vacancy filled. Is that correct?
Well, so the associate process that I was just talking about is different from the one that I'm running, and I'm just running the old-fashioned election way. But yes, essentially what happens, no matter what happens, whether you're going in as an associate judge or through an election, you go through your traffic court for however many months, and then, as you said, if there's a vacancy anywhere, you're going to go there. There are almost always vacancies, to be filled, due to mostly retirements, and so that's exactly it. Is you wind up getting put wherever there happens to be vacancy. There may be a vacancy now, but by the time you're out of traffic court, that vacancy has probably been filled, and so you may be going somewhere else. So there's not a whole lot of discretion as far as choosing where you want to go. You have to learn, to kind of be reasonable, listen to your chief judges, and learn along the way.
Yeah, I understand there's not that much discretion, but I was just wondering how many possible places could they assign you? Are there just a couple of vacancies? Are there, what is the number like of where they could assign you?
Oh, I don't know currently how many total vacancies there are, but
Uh,
it really and that's more of an internal, probably more internal information that the judges, the judiciary would know.
mm,
But in terms of the vacancies, as you said, it could be any number and it could be anywhere. It could be a judge who did, who as a lawyer practiced mostly in criminal law, now having to go do work in civil law. And for those, who don't know the distinction, criminal law, of course, is just, a criminal case, whereas civil cases generally deal with money or even a decision of a judge that has nothing to do with criminal acts. But basically, you could have one or vice versa. You could have a civil attorney practice in criminal law and vice versa. You could have a civil attorney who, had never practiced in chancery law go and get placed there. So there's a whole variety of different places that anybody can be placed.
mm. When you were in Elmwood Park, or when was it when you volunteered, or were you interning at the Oak Park Chamber of Commerce? What did you do there?
Oh, well, that was actually my first job as a 16-year-old, oddly enough. That I had 2 first jobs. That was one of them. One of them was at the Oak Park Chamber of Commerce as a kind of an intern, just working with them on a whole variety of clerical issues. It was my first job as a 16-year-old, loved every minute of it. Nighttime, I worked at the stock clerk union job, as I mentioned earlier. That was the start of that. So I actually had 2 first jobs as a 16-year-old. But yeah, the Chamber of Commerce was a great place to learn. You actually got a lot of outreach into the neighborhood. Since then, I believe the Oak Park Chamber has emerged with the River Forest Chamber of Commerce. So I think it's now called the Oak Park River Forest Chamber of Commerce, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it was a fantastic job and a great experience.
What do you mean by clerical work? Just filing like the whatever paperwork comes through the door and in the proper places, or was there more than that there at the Chamber of Commerce?
It was well, answering phone calls from the community, gathering new neighbor booklets, basically putting together the welcoming packets for people who just recently moved to the community, whether they were a renter or an owner, and then a whole variety of different things just throughout the community in terms of helping draft some of the documents that the chamber was putting out, and it was nice. I worked directly with one of the staffers there, and also with the director, with the director of the chamber at the time. So it was a great experience, and especially for a 16-year-old, it was pretty heady stuff to be able to do this. That they were entrusting you with some of these things, as a 16-year-old, and but you really learn a lot in a short period of time.
What do you mean by documents? Is that their newsletter that they put out to the community? What are you able to tell us about the documents?
Sure. Yeah. Well, as far as I can remember, it was, some 30 years ago almost. But basically, yeah, it would be community newsletters, various reports that would come out. Various subscribers to the chamber, would have things that they needed reviewed. So those kind of things. And, I think it was appropriate for a high school student to kind of look through those things, not only for typographical mistakes, but it also, for me at least, it offered an opportunity to ask questions. What does this particular provision mean? What is it? What do they mean when they say this? And it was, a learning opportunity for me because those are all, just foreign concepts for any 16-year-old who's never really had a full-time job like that, much less one at an important organization like a chamber.
Mhm. And how did you get the job? You were so young. How did you get that job at the Oak Park
Well,
Chamber of Commerce?
back then at least, it was a whole variety. You had to just, blanket the world with your resume. And at that point, of course, your resume is just, your grades and, your involvements in high school and things like that. And I think you may have had a teacher or two that had to, give you a recommendation. But, those are the kind of things back then. It was, very hands-on. People had to speak for you and apply for it. And it just seemed like a really fun job. And like I said, I learned a lot. People there were very kind and very friendly, especially for a scared 16-year-old. And I think at those young ages as well, I could say all these years later too, you start to learn how to deal with people, and how to treat them. It's the old golden rule, treating people as you want to be treated. But at the same time, sometimes you have people who are upset about things. Same with my stock clerk job, and it's a matter of learning how to deal with those more difficult situations and bringing calm and easing the situation as opposed to escalating it.
Mhm. And you recently got a lot of endorsements. Were you endorsed by the unions as well?
I was the Chicago Federation of Labor, which is a little over 300 unions, has endorsed me, and a variety of other unions. 134 IBEWs endorsed me, and several others. One of the Teamsters locals as well, just recently. And so I'm fortunate that I'm the only candidate in our race who's been endorsed by unions. And as I said, it's over 300 of them with all the various organizations involved, the Chicago Federation of Labor. Also been endorsed by Personal PAC, leading pro-choice organization.
Wait, let's concentrate on the unions for a
Oh,
little
sure.
bit. Uh, how did you get those endorsements? Did you have to talk with them? Did you apply for them? How did you get the endorsement from the unions?
So with every cycle of elections, the unions give people the opportunity to apply, and so I applied, and there was an interview a couple months ago, and basically you just went in front of many of the labor leaders, and they asked you various questions, and at the end of the day, then they would take your questions, and obviously you submit written credentials. They go through everything, and then they made their decisions on all the variety of races. In our race, there are many races right now on our ballot and throughout Cook County that really aren't contested, where there's only one candidate. Our race has four candidates, but of the four candidates, I was the one that the Chicago Federation of Labor endorsed.
And you got that announcement. Did you have to seek the announcement for when the endorsement session is open and you could apply for it, or did they send it to you?
Oh, in terms of when they notified me that I was
Uh,
endorsed?
That you could apply for the endorsement.
Oh, I see. Well, generally, all the various organizations that get involved in endorsements, they put those online, and so that's up to the individual candidates to look, to find and be diligent
Mhm.
and find, is this an organization that's endorsing in this cycle? Okay, and if so, what do I have to submit? What paperwork? And also, typically, almost all of them have interview processes as well, and so the Chicago Federation of Labor was no exception.
Did you do all this work by yourself, seeking out these organizations where you could apply for endorsements, or did you have some help?
No, these are the endorsements I generally look for myself. I do have a campaign team with me, but generally these endorsement sessions and various supports, I sought those right away because I think it's important, with people knowing a little bit of or little or nothing about a judge on the candidate or the ballot rather. You need to know more about the candidate, and I think not only are you able to put websites out about what you do as a lawyer, for more people to learn about, but when you get more and more endorsements like this, it speaks more to your support and whether people are comfortable with you, being a judge on the bench. That's also why I've gotten the, very support of every elected official, virtually every elected official throughout the entire subcircuit, from our members of Congress to our committee people. Again, it's very meaningful because, again, it shows if these are the elected officials that we've selected, to represent us in their various capacities, it's humbling that they are willing to support me as well.
You mentioned earlier that who was it? Was it the chief judge that, or was it a legislature that created additional circuits, the 16, 17, 18, and 19 subcircuits?
The General Assembly created
General
that a few
Assembly.
years ago, right?
To promote more diversity.
Mhm.
So, what about your opponents? Are they more diverse than you are? But of course, you did mention before that you have the most experience. But is there a little bit of a catch-22 over there if some of your opponents are uh, not are more diverse than you are?
Well, our race consists of two other gentlemen who are Greek Americans, and then a female attorney as well. So, all I think I'll allow them to speak to their diversity, but no, in terms of people of color, there are no people of color in the race. So ultimately, when in terms of diversity, you really have to look at what each candidate has done toward that. I mentioned earlier, just in my role as the advocates president and reaching out, trying to promote diversity, and that was 10 years ago. That was long before it became more in vogue for some people to do it. And similarly, when I was president of East Lakeview Neighbors, that about 4 or 5 years ago, what I did was I improved our diversity as well by expanding our boundaries. The boundaries went all the way down to Belmont. What that meant for our organization was now we were going to be able to include the LGBTQ community, which is North Halsted. And on top of that, we now have a number of LGBTQ members from the community who are on our board who serve in leadership roles. So I'm very proud of my record of diversity, and I'm proud that it was many years ago, and that I recognized many years ago the need for it.
Uh, this is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM, and we have with us at WZRD Michael Zink, who is a candidate for the 20th Subcircuit Court of Cook County. Michael, what is your platform for your candidacy? What are your goals if you do win?
Well, first and foremost, every judge, every judicial candidate is going to say the same, some form of the same thing, that I'm going to be fair and listen to every litigant and be fair on every case. And obviously that is important. That's, what I intend to do. But as I've told people, that's step one. Step two is, trying to then use that power, that requirement to be fair and impartial, but also to understand that there are ways that you can attack implicit bias in doing so. And what I mean by that is, for example, if every litigant that comes before you, hearing them out. There are judges who don't listen to people. And not many to their credit, but there are some judges who have a preconceived notion in their mind about what that person is, talking about, where they're coming from. And so it's important that every judge, and one of the things that I'm going to focus on if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, is to hear everybody out, and that includes self-represented litigants. There are self-represented litigants who get censored. As soon as they come into court, a judge may not want to hear what they're saying, or even worse, their opponent, if there's an attorney on the other side, or even if there's not, the opponent just tries to drown them out. I don't believe in censorship in the courts. Certainly you need to focus on relevance, but this is yet another way that I think my leadership in the community has worked, because I've presided over many contentious meetings in our local neighborhood, where things got heated. And, there are one of two ways you can go about doing that. You can either escalate it, or you can keep it on a track of reasonableness and, hear everybody out without censorship, but also make sure everybody's being coherent about what the other side's saying, and most importantly, being respectful, so that everything stays on track. That's the best way to stay on the road of relevance with these cases, when you hear cases, is to hear people out, but also maintain order. And I've also fortunately had a record of doing that as well.
In your role as an attorney, right? You have been very you've been trying to help, overcome any implicit bias as you deal with people. Is that what you're
Exactly,
saying?
and that's what many of my leadership roles in the bar associations and the community have all been involved in doing, is trying to get people to understand the other side, to hear everybody out, because I think that's a critical element of court that some people don't understand or emphasize enough. The other point about that too is if you're a judge and you truly hear people out, you give everybody their day in court. As every judge says, 50% of the litigants are going to be mad at them because they ruled against them. However, well, whoever happened to not be the one who's the prevailing party in a particular case, at least they can go back to their community, their family, and their friends and say, I had a fair day in court. That judge was fair to me. That judge heard me out. It's when those judges don't hear people out, or when the judges or the opponents are allowed to drown out the other side, the litigant who may not have prevailed, they'll go back to their community and they'll say not only do they believe they were treated unfairly, but it also tarnishes the impression and the perception of the legal system. So I think judges have an important role there, not only in administrating justice from the bench, but also improving the perception of justice among the community.
And in your past experience, you have seen that happen, right? That there wasn't there was people's voices got drowned out, and you want to have that not happen in your courtroom.
Absolutely. And I think, and for most people, if you're ever in a courtroom in front of a judge, it doesn't happen frequently. Most people, it's maybe once or twice in your life, for a traffic ticket or something. There may be some more, significant lawsuits, but at the same time, most people only have a very limited interface with the courts. And so it's important that every judge understand that every single case is important for that reason, because every one of those people that you see may never be in a courtroom again. Whether or not they have a lawyer, they're going to be able to go back to their community and say, was that judge fair? Did that judge hear everybody out? So I think it's important, no matter what area of the law that a judge sits in, that they hear everybody out, because it will have a much, much wider ripple effect than people realize.
For the litigants or whoever is in the courtroom and is representing themselves, is there any chance for, even if the judge hears them out, they have less experience than the attorneys? Have you seen cases in the past where people who represented themselves have actually won a case?
Oh, sure, definitely. Because what a judge has to do is the judge has to look at the facts and the law. And so what happens is, if the facts and the law are not on the side of, even if that one party has a lawyer, if the self-represented litigant has the law and has the facts on their side, it becomes pretty clear to a judge. So yes, absolutely. There's no such thing as a gimme, no matter what. Now, obviously, with that being said, it's always better if it's possible for people to have lawyers. I've always encouraged people to have lawyers, no matter what the situation is. At the very least, the lawyer can, point out the various areas of the law and, what things have to be emphasized, not to mention the procedures in court that everybody would need to know about. But it's certainly, yes, self-represented litigants can certainly prevail. And again, that's an onus on the judge to make sure that laws and facts are being applied fairly. Because if you automatically say the side with the lawyer is going to win, that's not impartial. I mean, that's preconceived and that's biased. Those are the kind of approaches that really need to be weeded out of the court system.
Mhm. And for people that need help defending themselves but do not have the means by which to do so, do they? I've heard of a lot of people, they try to go to these free legal help places, and there is no room for them. Do you have any advice for those people?
Yeah, so my advice is there will always be room for you. So there are a lot of different clinics that are available. And again, being today being Pulaski Day in the Polish community, there's one called icusPolonia, who helps people of all backgrounds. You don't need to be Polish at all. They represent and help people of many different cultures, of many different languages, that may not even speak English as a first language, of various different languages. So there are clinics like that all over the place. Likewise, you should be calling bar associations. So we have a couple of great ones here locally. Chicago Bar Association can help you get lawyers who are willing to work with you pro bono, which means work without having to pay them. And similarly, the Illinois State Bar Association has a great referral service for lawyers as well. There are plenty of resources. We're fortunate in the big city that we do have a lot of options. And again, none of these are going to be limited to your particular culture or language. You can certainly try any of these, and there are many, many others out there. And if for some reason one clinic says that they aren't able to take you because they don't have enough space or enough bandwidth, then certainly try a different one. But there are plenty of them out there, and you should absolutely reach out to those resources.
Well, I have approached the Chicago Bar Association before, and they usually recommend a lawyer, whatever I happen to need, and then they'll say that the first visit is free, the consultation is free. I never asked them before about pro bono services. I think that that's pretty new. Has that always been around?
Yeah, many law firms provide pro bono services, or at the very least, they can at least steer people in the right direction as far as what they need to do. It is one of those situations that it's going to depend on every law firm. So, as you said, some law firms are going to say, no, I can't, take any pro bono cases, but many will. And there's also a whole variety of different resources from the Legal Aid of Chicago is another one. They'll help people, at least steer them in the right direction. And again, if for some reason they aren't able to help them, they will, be able to steer you in the direction of an attorney who may. And so there are very few dead ends. I always tell people, do not, you will have to be persistent sometimes, but there are very few dead ends. Just stay persistent. You will find somebody who can help you.
So for the Chicago Bar Association, our listeners could call them and ask if, concerning a certain uh, branch of law, they need the legal help in. Are there any pro bono services from firms? Could they ask that?
Right, what law firms will do is they'll often report to the bar associations, do they do pro bono work,
Mhm.
something like that. But also these bar associations have, wide resources as far as different clinics, different organizations that can help represent people, without charge. So they'll, even if it's not a private law firm, they will have a list of their various other organizations that those callers should reach out to.
And the one with the Polish American amicus Polonia.
Yes,
Okay.
icusPolonia, yeah.
And then how would our listeners get in contact with them? And is there a one-time event or is it a continuous?
No, they meet, I believe, every month, and I believe they're on the northwest side of the city. But yes, they have people there from a variety of different areas of the law. And as I said, language is not a barrier, no matter what language you speak. You're absolutely welcome to join. But then there are various other organizations just like that, and the various cultural bar associations that promote them. And so, yes, it's absolutely something that people should get involved with. Because again, it's a nice thing to have. We're in a big city. We fortunately have very generous attorneys and judges who are around who donate their time to help with these clinics because, not everybody can afford to have an attorney.
Well, the Chicago Bar Association, I think first Saturday of the month, they have a call-in center where people could call and ask attorneys for advice. And then they say, of course, it's not binding, it's not guaranteed, but it is helpful advice. Have you ever done that call center before?
I've done it a couple of times with the icusPolonia a number of years ago, yes, and
Oh,
it's very meaningful. I mean, you see people, I think the most meaningful part of it is you get to see people come in and they're very nervous, they're very worried, they don't know what to do about their situation. By the time they leave, they're much more comfortable. They understand the world is not ending, that they do have a good path, a good roadmap as far as what they need to do. And I think those are the kind of intangible benefits of these kind of clinics as well, is that it brings peace of mind to people who are losing sleep over their matters.
what else in your candidacy? You want to overcome the implicit bias. So what else should our listeners know about Michael Zink, who is running for 20th Subcircuit Court of Cook County?
Well, I think in my particular subcircuit with the 20th Subcircuit, I mentioned all the different wards earlier. I've had a whole variety of experiences in virtually every single one of those wards. This subcircuit truly is home. Every one of these subcircuits, I can tell you either something I did for my career or extracurricular for the community, for my family. All these different various wards throughout the subcircuit are a second home to me. And so anybody who, fortunately for me, who I'm fortunate to receive a vote from, will also be voting for somebody who is truly a voice of the community.
Well, thank you so much, Michael Zinka, for joining us on WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM today. And if our listeners want to learn more about you, where should they go?
We have a website, zinkforjudge.com, and also obviously if you just Google, you'll find a little bit more about me and the various support that I have, as well as a lot of things about my background.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for having me.
Again, Michael Zink is running for 20th Subcircuit Court of Cook County. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I started losing my voice there.
Oh, that's okay. It happens, especially with this weather.